Hi, this is Jen with the Little Craft Corner, and today I'm going to show you how to make this beautiful mixed media layout. Stay tuned. So what we're going to do is start with some brush marker refill inks, and we're going to just put a little drop on our palette. You only need a little bit as these are really concentrated. For this project, I'm using Sweet Leaf and Lime re-inkers in the brush marker refill set. Then I'm just going to add a little bit of water to dilute my inks. So with this project, my final, I guess, test, if you want to call it, on this class was to start with a blank piece of white paper and create a pattern paper using Altenew supplies in mixed media. I will say this was a really fun challenge, and I look forward to creating more. What you're going to be seeing here is I'm taking a small piece of, actually this is packaging acetate, but it's packaging from one of my Altenew products. It might be a stamp set, I'm not sure, but I just cut like a 2x3 piece of acetate, and I'm dipping it into the diluted pigment ink and picking up a little bit of that ink, tapping off some extra, and then I'm just randomly going around creating little points of interest with the ink. I'm smushing the ink, I'm blending the ink, I'm tapping the ink, adding some splatters with the water brush marker. There really is no exact method. It just is a matter of your own style. But the point is you just want to take a little bit of acetate. You want to dip it in your ink, smush it onto the paper, and leave little marks where you want your impressions to be. It really is fun, and no two layouts will be the same. I redid this twice with using the Sweet Leaf, and then I went back in Lime. These two are good colors to mix with, and it just created this nice little intricate balance of color, and it really is a lot of fun to do. I would highly recommend you just playing around. You can't really mess it up. Just do a little bit at a time, because the more you can't take away, but you can always add. So this was the first step, is you want to get your base layer all prepared and set. So once all of those layers of ink were dry, we're going on to the next step. And we're using Caribbean Sky and Arctic pigment inks. The reason we're using now pigment inks, first we had the dye, but now it's pigment, is one, we're creating mixed media. So we want various forms of media. And this pigment ink is going to blend so beautifully. It's almost like a creamy butter type when you're blending them through a stencil. So this is the leaf drop stencil from Altenew, and I just want to put the stencil over, one of the green images. And with the blending brush, you're going to take a little bit of the two blues and blend them together. And you're not really, again, this is just a very relaxed and fun way of being like an artist almost. You are choosing a section of the green, and you're blending in both of the blues around this image. And look at this, when you lift it up, look how fun that is. It just like really elevates the page from just green splatters to now you have yet another level of interest. So what you're going to do is go around all of the areas that you just did all this great green smushing, and you're just going to take a little section of that and repeat the same process with your two inks going over and blending, and see what kind of project you create. Wow, so now here comes some more fun. We're going to take some embossing powder, and this is clear embossing powder, and we're going to put that right over all of our recently stenciled areas. pigment ink stays wet longer and it loves to collect this embossing powder. And then once we heat it up in the next step, where do you see this beautiful glossy result? So right now, all we're doing is adding clear embossing powder right over the 3 images we just did in our blue pigment inks. All right, so now we're going to get that clear embossing powder that we just put over our pigment inks and get them heat set. So you just take out your heat gun and you go over and get them all nice and dry, and then look at this amazing result. You can just see it crystallized and shiny, and you have now created a really good backdrop for your mixed media ink. Well, so look how far we've gotten already. Okay, we've gotten at a blank white piece of paper, and now it's starting to look like a patterned piece of paper. So let's review. We have already taken our re-inkers, and we took some acetate and we blended it on our cardstock. Again, remember, this is going to be cardstock that is about 120-pound weight, nice and thick, so it doesn't warp when you're adding a little bit of wetness to it. And then we took our mixed media ink, and through our stencil we did some blending of Caribbean sky and Arctic. So that's number 2. Number 3, we then took our crystal clear embossing powder and we heat set that. So there's that's number 3. So 1, 2, and 3, we have 3 layers of yumminess right here. And now we're going to go into the next part. All right, so next up in our mixed media layout, we're going to add a little bit of embossing paste, and I'm using the Altenew white embossing paste along with one of the pellet knives. And we are just going to do, I have the fine tool stencil. I'm just going to randomly pick some images and add points of interest. We're not covering the entire image by far, just sort of taking a $50 size or so and adding in the paste just to, again, add more interest to the mixed media layout. With mixed media, you want to add a little bit at a time. This is a fun medium that you can overdo it. So my advice is just to take one layer at a time, take a step back, take a look at it, and kind of see where you want to add the next layer. Our next layer for this layout is we're going to take one of the Altenew's watercolor paper pads, the 9x12, and we are going to use this entire sheet to create some backgrounds for our photos and for some embellishments. So what we're going to do is completely cover this entire paper with some watercoloring. Now, watercoloring I'm choosing is the water brush markers. I have the Spring Garden set, and specifically I'm going to play with the Rubelites and Midnight Violet. If you prefer to use watercolor inks or watercolor paints, then you can certainly get out your paint sets and dilute that. But this to me is a perfect way to add some color to your background. So in order to do this, to get the entire page all nice and wet, we're going to be using a brayer. For those of you who don't know what a brayer is, it simply is like a paint roller. And what it allows you to do is to get a large surface area of paint, of wetness, of color onto your surface. And then we're gonna roll it on and create patterns with this. It's much quicker than brushing every little stroke on, and this really gives a good artsy effect. So we're going to take our palette, and we're going to drop some color on here. This is really concentrated. And be careful that you don't open it towards you. They do tend to get a little messy and spilly. So just a word of caution. And then we're going to take some water, just a mister spray, We're going to add some water. We're going to get our brayer and simply just roll on here. It's okay if the colors blend. That is kind of exactly what we want. I had to go back in and add a little bit more coloring. I don't like to waste my color, so I just wanted to make sure that I had enough. I'm going to go over this again. From here, I added this kind of directly to the sheet. I took my mister, gave this a nice soaking. It's very wet. And I'm just going around, moving the water around. Hold on, I had a little bit too much. I'm going to soak some of that up. So after this dried, and I did let this dry overnight, by the way, I'm now going to use this one panel and not only frame my photo with it, but I'm going to use it for extra embellishments. Side note, I made 2 of these because as I was moving ahead, I knew I wanted to make tons of flowers. So you only saw me make 1, but in actuality, there are 2 panels. Wow, look how far we have gotten so far. So I took that large piece of pink paper and cut it up into various length sizes. The one strip is a 2-inch by say 4.5, 5-inch. And it was really bright for the layout. The greens and the blues were a little bit more muted. So the best way to mute your color is really to add maybe some white on top. And in this case, I took the fine tool stencil and just simply did a little bit of stenciling with white embossing paste. The other thing you might notice at the very top and the bottom or the side is it was too stark white. So I peeled back some of the white paper and I added again some of that pink watercolor paper behind and added the drop leaf stencil on top of that. And then what I did was I was in a process of what am I going to do? I thought she is such a cute little girl. We're going to add some flowers. And so those 2 pieces of paper that we colored with all the braying and all the splattering, they were actually cut up to create all of the flower blossoms, the top portion and the bottom right portion, and then the little side piece that you can see I'm tucking behind the photo. When you're doing a 12 by 12 layout, I want to kind of focus on this little section up here. Sometimes people that do scrapbooking feel like they have a lot of white space, and that's uncomfortable for them. The best way to overcome that is to take the top of your paper and rip a half moon shape, maybe 2-inch by 1-inch, and there's nothing fancy. You're just kind of ripping it out, like taking a chunk out. Then take your watercolored paper and simply glue it behind. And then now you can go back to your all the multimedia that you're doing, all the distressing, and you can add some stencil layers. And then I took the leaf stencil and I wanted to tone down that pink, and I did a little embossing right on top of the already colored watercolored paper. So I had a lot of pink left over, and I thought, you know what, this Peony Dream die set would be just perfect to add some more interest to this layout. And the blossoms on this die set are so pretty. You don't need that many. And I just went around and took all of the die sets and created lots and lots of layers. See how they're all variegated? Now what I'm holding there is just pink cardstock. That is just from my stash. But everything you see in my hand, that was created by you. That was created by just doing all of those fun coloring. And every time it's going to look very different. So that's what makes this kind of project really fun, because no two layouts are going to be the same. And look at the tone on that. Isn't that really fun? So this was the next step in our process, is getting all of the florals cut out. So now it's time to assemble your masterpiece. When I was going around thinking what embellishments I'm going to use, I knew that I was going to use the peony die set. And as you remember, my task was to take a blank piece of paper, make it a pattern paper, and have mixed media. So even my embellishments, I met that challenge head on, and the layers of the peony blossom have been embossed with the embossing paste with the dotty stencil, and I added a touch of blue as one of my layers. And what you see at the bottom there is I am assembling all of the flowers to finish out this layout. Well, look at this. We are almost finished our project. When you are doing, mixed media, it is so much fun to really get creative. Use your excess strips to create the embellishments, and that's really where they came from. All of the different pinks that you see in the flowers were all from creating our own watercolor background. And I assembled the flowers using some paper that I already had. And now it's time to add the embellishments. So I'm using Altenew's Enjoy the Ride. And when you use a kit, it really makes your life so much easier, because all of the colors have already been predetermined for you. So if you're going to use those color families, adding the little embellishments really just kind of puts the icing on the cake. So I'm using this little camera, and I double popped it up on foam tape because the two flowers next to it are kind of thick, and I needed this to come to the forefront. So at this point, I'm simply just adding the embellishments that I think will make this layout have its final little completion, its final touches, if you will call it. We're going to add a couple little words, and then I'll add some journaling. But that is really it, guys. I am so happy you joined me for this very lengthy process. As I mentioned in previous videos, I am in my level 3 of the Altenew Educator Certification Program, and I am at a very exciting time of almost there as one of the Altenew educators. I have one more class, and then I'm on to my final exam. And I am new to the YouTube world and would love your support. So give me a thumbs up if you like it. Subscribe to my channel. Any and all comments are appreciated. I want to bring things that are going to be helpful to you as you begin your crafting journey. My last little piece here is I'm trying to figure out where to put the magical word. And with everything, and it seems with crafting and scrapbooking, groups of 3 is the way to be. So I just put it down because I have my camera, that's 1, my 2 little words, 2 and 3, and that is it. So I'm going to add the journaling, but thank you so very much for staying tuned in for this very lengthy process, and you have a wonderful day. See you next time. Bye-bye.